you believe that we started recording right in the middle of 2020 with all of the COVID and lockdowns going on around us, unable to meet up? So like many a young gentleman, we turned to the internet for our entertainment. Tried to find a place where we could meet up and talk about the good, the bad, and that time that Stu saw a pelican on the canal. In order to facilitate our dreams of answering all of the big questions in film, and after a few attempts at recording via other methods to various levels of success, we found Zencastr, a super easy web-based one-stop shop for recording. Log in and you're ready to record in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a tech genius to get high quality audio or video. And on top of that, the one time we have had an issue, the fact that the multi-layered backups are stored locally means it's easily fixed all in browser. There are plenty of tools you need when you start podcasting, so let Zencastr take that headache away as it offers a place to record, edit and distribute all from one website. Any lazy bones Jones can pick up and play and have studio quality audio or 4K video put out for the world to see when using Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code CAGEFIGHTING and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And now, hit the music.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It is Matt Guy here, so we have a themed episode for your listening pleasure this evening.
Hello, sorry. I wasn't really paying attention when Matt was talking. I was setting up my notes for the rest of it, and then I realised, oh shit, we've started. Yeah, it's Andy, by the way. Hello.
See, normally it's like the middle gasping, oh, who's actually going to go second? But I knew that you'd stutter then. I knew that if I jumped in and you went third, you'd get all messed up. So there you are. I helped you.
I wasn't even looking at the screen. I was busy over here, and yeah, never mind.
Before we get on to it, can you explain your terribleness to everyone? Because since you are the only person in the world who doesn't like Dune Part 2.
No, I didn't say I didn't like it. I don't get the hype. Like, it was fine, but like the beginning of it, I thought was decent. The end of it, I thought was really good, and actually it does make me want to know what's going to happen next. But the middle portion was so fucking long and so dry and dull. I don't get the hype. I just thought it was a fine film. I didn't think it was spectacular like a lot of other people have said. It was just okay.
When I saw the voice notes come through, I had to excuse myself and then go to the fire escape. Listen to the voice notes because I just knew that I'd burst out laughing as soon as I hate them. And I wasn't disappointed either. This isn't friendly enough, is it?
What do you think of Austin Butler in that film? Because I thought she was a comedy cartoon villain in it. He was so camp. It was too much for the setting, I thought. Do you agree with that, or am I being really harsh on it?
I didn't think much of him, to be honest. I thought as a character they did well to make you care about a character in a short space of time. I didn't think much to the performance. I didn't think much about any of the performances, really, in that there was so much going on visually and for its audio. I didn't even really sit back and go, XYZ put in a great acting performance in it, to be honest.
Yeah,
When you mentioned him, I couldn't even remember seeing him in it. But not in a bad way, because what I said a few weeks ago when he said that he had to have elocution lessons to get out of his Elvis voice.
He still did his Elvis voice. Like, it was Elvis via maybe Johnny Cash slightly. There's a bit of a gruffness to it, but he was still Elvis under it all.
It's just his voice now. Yeah, I mean, if you pay for 3 hours of throbbing, then that's what you're going to get. And have you been dreaming of the pulsating member that goes into the ground to tease the sand pussy up, as you put it?
No, I haven't been. But like I said, it was fine. That's all I will say. My friend saw it, who I think has read the books, and his response was pretty much the same. In fact, they enjoyed the first one more, which I still don't like. But apparently the third book is shit. Even fans of that world don't like that book. So that really does worry me a little bit, because I thought they ended that film so well that I actually want to see the third one, which isn't how I felt at the end of the first film.
Well, these two were the first book, is my understanding. Okay. So this was like part 1 and part 2 of the first book. So the third film will be the second book, I think. From now, I only get Rhea Ripley and June TikToks these days. So according to that's the second half of my TikTok algorithm, I think this was part 1 and part 2 of the first book. So
okay.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, but I'm sure this will rumble on as time goes on and more people see it as well. But yeah, I wouldn't mind. Well, actually, I'll have a quick look now. I wonder if the books are on Audible, which is pretty much the only way I digest any books these days.
I think like 50 hours.
Yeah, because I bet they're probably about fucking 800 pages or something, because there's that many of them, and I think they're all like fucking huge tomes of novels.
So June is on there. June is the first June, June the book is on there at 21 hours. And which, if you're on, and listen, we're certainly not paid for this podcast, but if you're on Spotify Premium and you're the primary account holder, you get 15 hours free listening a month, and the book is on there as well. What? It's in Dutch. This won't fucking do. Het leven van Paul van het Nobel Hus Atreides. That means nothing.
I mean, it sounds like COD English almost, doesn't it? That it's like it's an attempt at English, but it's not quite there.
So you just summon something.
My favourite thing at the moment is seeing the different memes of people that change the HDMI cable, and it's just Lisan Al Ghul, whatever it is. Al Gaib, whatever it is. Yeah, Lisan Al Gaib. Yeah, anyway. But listen, if you have seen June, please reach out to us, because we would genuinely like to hear your opinions on it, because it's one of those I think people are buying in now into memes of some of the ridiculousness of it, and people saying, you thought one of the things people went, you thought that was as bad as The Godfather, was what is like the running joke now.
Yeah,
people and I just thought that's hilarious when it comes to like people saying, and like the Two Towers really wasn't that good compared to this kind of thing. But yeah, I'm sure it rumbled. But one of the things that when you talk about, I don't know about high art, but kind of in the same vein that nearly everything that HBO put out like about 10 years ago was absolute quality. The subject and theme of this podcast is going to be A24. I am such a filthy casual when it comes to film these days that anytime I hear anything about A24, I genuinely have a bit of a fear and trepidation about it, because I know so little about it. And everybody talks about A24 as if it's this, like the mecca of filmmaking, and it's a bit intimidating to somebody that doesn't really know that world, doesn't know where to start. So I thought there's going to be plenty of people that are in my shoes. We'll do an episode on A24 and give us a bit of an idiot's guide, and this might be kind of a running theme type for episodes going forward for us, and to talk about A24. So I'm going to go through kind of 6 talking points really, and then we might branch off and do bits and bobs along the way. But Andy, I'll come to you first. What is A24, the context of it, who set it up and under what circumstances?
Okay, so it was founded by 3 film veterans, Daniel Katz, David Fenker, and John Hodges. They're 3 friends who'd worked in the film and production industries for years. They named it after the A24 motorway in Italy, because that's where Katz was driving when he decided that they need to found this company. Basically, the mission statement was that they wanted to make movies with a distinctive point of view. They wanted to make indie films exciting again. A24 wanted to give filmmakers the freedom to make films without a big name studio interfering or influencing what they wanted to produce. They wanted to make creative people use their creative bones again, I suppose, is what they wanted. This model, it sort of influenced Netflix to some extent when I think about it. The main difference being that Netflix uses like a bottomless pit of money to give to directors to make whatever they want, whereas A24 is more sort of low or mid-budget films, which, you know, they're not going to be recouping $1 billion on a movie. They're probably going to be spending somewhere between 50 and 80 million in the hopes of getting 150 to 200 million. So they're looking at sort of smaller profit films that are a little bit more niche rather than big grand things that everybody will see in the cinema or on Netflix down the line.
So Stu, from your point of view, like, when was the first time you heard of A24 as a thing, like people starting to make, you know, take notice of it and it become kind of a talking point, or I don't know what the phrase I want to use here is, but like the benchmark of quality? I think it was like an old wrestling term, but like, you know, it's the benchmark of a quality film.
Probably 3 years ago when I was talking to him more. I don't, because I had a look on the wiki just because of, I obviously would never have seen all of their films because not all of us are like that. But I was surprised how many I actually had seen, and there's 16 on that list. Some of which I had no idea were A24, which is both a good and bad thing in some cases that we'll get into. But I think when I realised it was a thing was watching Midsummer after I'd already watched Hereditary. Because them two are very in a similar kind of vein, but not really. But it's got the overall, well, and we just said about the kind of the vibe of it all. It's very constant in a lot of them of that kind. But I still don't think, I think it's only been in the last year to 18 months, I think people have started talking about, oh, it's an A24 film, I'm going to automatically see it. Now, I didn't see a lot of that going on before, especially before COVID, especially.
Yeah, I kind of I'm starting to hear that more and more, that people are talking about the next A24 release as if, like, it's not that it's the next Marvel film, but almost along those lines, and it's like something is getting, like, it's now a brand as opposed to a studio or an entertainment company, that like people are excited for the new release of that, which I can't remember the last, you know, when I think of that, I think of franchises. I think of people think about the next Star Wars film or the next Bond film. To have that as an entertainment company, Andy, is quite a big thing, really. I mean, people do it for directors, the next Scorsese or the next, you know, Spielberg film. But I can't think of anyone. No one goes, "Oh, I can't wait for the next 20th Century Fox." No, you know what I mean, or anything like that. So it's a big deal.
The nearest one that I can think of would be probably
Blumhouse, yeah.
In the horror world. But obviously their quality is very hit and miss in comparison to A24. But that's the only other one which has got a sort of bit of an indie name. Probably less independent now than it was back when. But I think Blumhouse is the only other one that's got any sort of credibility as a studio, because everybody else, they try and do a bit of everything. They don't really have a mission statement as such. Whereas you do feel with A24, they do have a mission statement, and Blumhouse, they want you to experience horror in new and inventive ways. And that's kind of magical in the modern day, because Hollywood feels like it's such a fucking horrible, cynical place that it is just about money. It is show business for a reason, whereas it feels like for these, it's about the art, which I think should be commended, to be honest.
It's about the show.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse my, like, what's the word, like, crassness with this, but that all sounds a bit wanky. So, what is the target audience of A24? Is it the film lovers film company? Is it trying to broaden its horizons and make everybody love film, or is it, you know, again, and this is is it an AEW or is it a WWE or is it neither? Like, what is its target audience, Andy, in terms of what it wants to achieve with people?
I think it's evolved over the years. I think what it was aimed very much at me. It was aimed at the millennials or even possibly like Gen Z. I think it's aimed at that particular kind of audience. The initial films that they put out, so Ex Machina, which is a fucking great film. In order to promote that film, they set up a Tinder account for Ava, who is the AI or maybe not an AI. So they tried new and inventive ways for Ghost Story. They had people go into this pop-up shop in New York and put on the ghosts' costumes and then talk about like really deep and meaningful things. They tried to connect in a really creative new way. They were trying to bring it sort of to the modern day and attract new people to films who possibly had only really grown up with big budget Marvel or Warner Brothers or, just heavily driven IP stuff. So I do feel like they tried to appeal to other people who maybe liked films but were getting a bit tired of what we were seeing week in, week out in the cinema. So I think that really was the target audience. But obviously now we've got Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is one of the most seen films I think they've done. It feels like that one crossed boundaries probably more so than anything else. So I think they are branching out now somewhat.
And Stu, like as a prediction kind of going forward for them, do you think that continues? Do they, I mean, their films presumably are distributed themselves and they're not like, are they, do they have a dedicated streaming platform, Stu, that you're aware of? Like how do their films meet the wider, filthier world? Like, are they like? They don't go to Netflix presumably because they would be making their own stuff.
Yeah, they haven't got an A24 streaming service, which would be. I mean, that would be one worth actually paying for, and not just stealing. But it just seems like a case by case basis, where a bit like with like the PlayStation, like the gaming films things, like the PlayStation ones, where Twisted Metal was a series that got made over there, and then Uncharted got made by Sony itself, and they kind of pick different places to distribute different things. It seems like a lot like what Andy was saying. They got to kind of back off a little bit and be a bit more mainstream. I think that the thing with Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's one of the weirdest things you'll ever see. It's not. It should not be your stepping stone into this world at all. Stones accepted. But it's brilliant. And I think the fact that it's brilliant is just not because it's made by them. It's because they let the people who make it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what this is. It's not pissing about, and it's for people who just want to maybe not. You like films, and you go and watch 4 a year or 5 a year or wherever. If one of them, you think, I don't want it to be a superhero film, or I don't want it to be a Fast or Mission Impossible or something like that. If you want something slightly different, I think it's got to the stage now where A24 is the one that ticks the box for you, because it's not so pretentious and arty nonsense that you're not going to have a clue about it, and you're looking at the mise en scène and the Polish subtitles in the black and white.
There is some of that as well, though.
Oh, absolutely, there is.
It does appeal to that as well.
I mean, there's no way on earth you're going to get pensioners going to watch Beau is Afraid and then be happy. That just doesn't happen. So you are picking your battles with it. But I think what they're doing now, and you look at the sheer amount of ones that are newer on this list compared to earlier on, there's a lot of variation, but none of them are sold out. That are air quotes.
Mm. Well, that leads me on very nicely to, if someone was to look at and think their first experience was The Lighthouse, for example, and they just looked at the stills and they looked at everything else, they might, be forgiven for feeling a bit like, this world ain't for me. So what would you say, Stu, were the most easiest accessible films for like the newbie to start off with A24, and should sink their teeth in, get a kind of vibe for what it is they're trying to do, and what they're trying to achieve, what would be the best couple of films for you, for the newbie to start with, would you say?
I mean, I think that's the good thing about it, that you have got a bit of something for everyone, because you have got the horror, you have got the kind of weirdness, you have got the absolute batshit insane. But for a filthy newbie, just a casual going into, who wants to watch something nice or something entertaining, something like either X or Bodies, 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 or something like that, because it is very kind of Scream Queens more than Scream, but really, really well made. And then you have got things like the Disaster Artist, which I was amazed was made. It was an A24. But again, do people know about The Room? If you're just talking about casual people, maybe not.
But yeah, I would watching The Disaster Artist without watching The Room be as weird as it sounds, because could you watch The Disaster Artist and then, because of it, then watch The Room and go, holy fuck, The Room is as bad as The Disaster Artist makes it out to be?
I don't think it'll work.
I think you could watch it as a film about making a film and you'd laugh, but you wouldn't get any of the references.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do need that. You don't need that deeper knowledge, but it certainly makes it a lot better a film if you do have that knowledge.
Yeah, fair. What about you, Andy? What do you think are some of the more easily accessible films for the newbie to start with?
So I found an article on a website called purposestudios.in, and it basically gave you what a A24 film would be, and it talks about, it's usually something you've never seen before. They like to subvert the genre. There's a visual language, like every shot is visually stunning. It's visual poetry more so than prose, I think is probably the best way to put it. And also they tend to be auteur-driven, like the director or writer is allowed to flex their creativity. So to that end, I've picked 3 films that I think probably fit the brief for most of those. The first one is a film called Enemy, which is a psychological thriller by Denis Villeneuve. It is the story of Jake Gyllenhaal's character, who one day watching a film sees somebody who is his doppelganger, who happens to be an actor. And it's all sort of like a mind-bending thing where they don't become one, but lines get crossed and blurred, and there's lots of symbiology in regards to tarantulas and all these kind of things. I think if that would be a good one to see. It's probably quite complex, if I'm honest, but I think if you're going to dive into that world, that's a decent place to start, because it does have a lot of the mise-en-scène and all those things that Stu mentioned before. They're all present in that, and with it being Denis Villeneuve, you sort of expect that, I think, when you've seen his later works. So that would be a good place to start. I've got a film called Zola from 2021. Zola is a film that was made on a Twitter thread, which is the most 21st century thing ever. So it was a waitress who befriends a stripper, and they go on a trip to Florida where they're going to, I think they're going to rip somebody off, basically. So it's sort of like a crime thrillery kind of thing. And whilst there, it's all to do with exploitation and sex trafficking. And visually, it's really interesting, like the way they were showing the texts and tweets and all these things that was happening whilst they were there on screen. It was so visually interesting. It's a very easy film to watch. It's unique, and I really liked that about it. It's not the best film in the world. I was going to put it in my maybe a film to avoid, but there are interesting bits to it that I think probably do need to be seen. And the other film that I've got is a film called Swiss Army Man, which stars Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, and the Riddler, Paul Dano. And it is the Daniels who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. This story follows Hank, who gets stranded on a deserted island. He befriends a corpse, which is Harry Potter. This corpse is basically the Swiss Army Man. So he manages to ride him, and the flatulence that comes out of the corpse propels him across the water. And it's got all these really silly, quirky things that happen to it. But overall, it's a story that's about loneliness and friendship and the human experience. Like, there's a lot of depth to the film underlying this really silly story at the top of it, which I think probably would be the easiest one to get into A24 films with. So those would be my 3. I think would be the best story.
If you were watching, or if you were setting these as a challenge, would you do it chronologically, just from day dot? Do you think, if you're going to watch all of them, I'm sure there's got to be a podcast out there that's doing it. Probably try and reach out to them, really, see how they're getting on. But how would you do it if you're going to watch all of them?
I think I would do it chronologically because there's no through line to the films, so it's not really. You need to, but at the same time, there's just so many of them. I think that would be the best way to keep a list of the way you're going. To be perfectly honest, I think that's how I would approach it if I was going to do it.
Fair. So then moving on then to, the absolute hit list, the ones that you really should be going out of your way. Let's say you're as Stu mentioned, you see 4 or 5 films a year and you're sick of one. You want to pin it down to, you want to see the cream of the crop of these movies. What are you seeing, Andy? Which are the ones that absolutely stand out? Maybe a couple of different genres that they span across.
Like I'd said to you earlier, I had a list of like 30 odd must-see films from A24. Their quality speaks for itself. It's incredible. I'd throw in the Ari Aster films to start off with. So Hereditary, Midsommar, and Beau is Afraid. Midsommar's probably the easiest, the most accessible of the 3, but I would probably watch them in that order. I don't think you could start with Beau is Afraid because it's the most off-the-wall one that you need to understand Ari Aster before you get to that one. So that would be in there for sure. The Iron Claw, I absolutely adored that film. I thought it was fantastic. Visually, that is A24 to a T. Everything looks like it was poetry in motion, quite literally. Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think everyone should see. Uncut Gems, I mean, you were a fan of that as well, massive, I remember rightly. That's an absolutely tremendous film. Past Lives from last year, which I've spoken about quite a lot on the podcast. I would throw in Lady Bird, which is Greta Gerwig's film. I think it was her directorial debut, if I remember correctly. And that's a story with Saoirse Ronan. It's a coming-of-age comedy drama, and it's all about her difficult relationship with her mother, but it's still really funny as well. The last one I'll mention is First Reformed, which is starring, it's not Kevin Bacon, it's the other one who I always get confused, Ethan Hawke. I always get them confused in my head. I don't know why. Ethan Hawke plays a priest who is trying to help a couple reconcile and get through a difficult patch in their marriage, whilst there is all this horrible outside influences going on in the world. It feels very precedent today when you think about the Israel-Gaza situation and how all of that is impacting on the smaller scale, and how it just builds up and then explodes. First Reformed is an excellent film that barely anybody saw, but Ethan Hawke is a tremendous actor, and that's the other one I think is a must-see.
Okay, excellent. What about you, Stu? What's on your hit list, absolute must-sees? If you're in, pressed for time, you can only kind of catch 4 or 5 of these films.
I mean, all of the above that he's just said. There is a few others that he didn't mention, though. The Whale, which I thought would be top of his list, which is, it's not a good film, but it's an incredible individual performance, which you really need to see anyway, even if it's not hard to watch. Well, it's hard to watch because it's terrible. It's a tragic, desperately awful experience watching it, but it's incredibly well made and well acted. The Witch, one of the earlier ones. Was it VV Itch or
yeah?
It spelled a silly way. I remember watching that just without knowing any context of it, and I couldn't believe how spot on it is. I can't really say anything, can you? Because there's not. And to say it's goat, it'd be an understatement. Tyra will get that one. Killing of a Sacred Deer. I don't think we've ever talked about that film on here.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, come on. There's your homework for tomorrow. Watch it tomorrow and report back. Amazing film. Absolutely amazing film. And obviously our very own Lord Nick Cage in Dream Scenario from last year. That was just wonderful in its own weird, crude little way. But I mean, my favourite out of all of them obviously everything everywhere all at once, but Ex Machina is a work of art. It's perfect. It's one of the most perfect films I've ever seen. But if you wanted to start anyway, it's not that hard to. The whole is AI real? It's a tale as old as time at this point, so it's not hard to get your head around. But it's so well done, and it looks so amazing for the budget that regardless of the budget that it had, it just looks amazing anyway. I'd say for someone starting out, watch Ex Machina first.
I think I mistook Ex Machina for something else. Was Amelia Clarke in something similar? And I'm sure like I'd mistook her in something for it being this film, and I was like, oh, I don't want to see it because I don't like her.
It's Alicia Vikander, who does look a bit like Amelia Clarke.
Maybe not then. I'm not sure, but like I've heard glowing reviews after glowing reviews for that, so I'll have to watch that. I've not seen it, so I'll have to watch that as maybe the first jump in after. So I'm looking at
You're right there, not the street, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Listening to the Max and Vittorio's Guide to Parenting as I do, they're like huge into Barry Keoghan. Well, how do you pronounce his name? Keoghan. Yeah, they're mad into him, and they like talk about like that like, very very high up on their list as well. And that Inner Sheeran, that is that an A24 as well.
Oh fuck.
No, Banshees was Fox Studio. Spotlight. Oh, yeah, Searchlight. That's the one. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I
Fair.
think, yeah.
So then, Stu, if you were, looking at this, what would you avoid if you wanted to kind of make a good impression as A24? What would you tell your viewers to avoid? Is there anything on there that you maybe think is wanky for the sake of wanky, or it's just not really? It's kind of an intermediate A24 or an expert A24 kind of film. You'd avoid the casual watching.
I mean, I would not watch Beau is Afraid until maybe ever. It depends on your sensibilities, because it's so mental that. I mean, I remember talking about that at the time when we watched it. Was it last year or the year before? Yeah, last year. And I still think about it now. I don't even like it. I didn't enjoy myself one bit, but it had such an impact because it's so weird. It's a masterpiece, but there's no way you could watch that first. You stay away from that as long as possible. But the only one that I've seen 16 of them, like I said. Out of all of them, The Green Knight just screams shit. I hated every second of it. I know Andy's shaking his head. And we've talked about this at the time when I watched it, and I couldn't believe how bad it was. And I didn't realise it was A24 at the time, and I was shocked to find out that it was. I didn't get it. It didn't rhyme with me at all. It just pissed me off. So A Green Knight is one to avoid.
I think Green Knight is based on like an old English fable.
Yeah, it is.
And it's almost, it's not sword and sandals, but it's almost Lord of the Ringsy, which is why I'm quite surprised that Stu hates it so much. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film. Is it Dev Patel who's in that one, if I remember rightly? And Finchy from The Office, Ralph Fiennes. Yeah, it's a really good film. I'm genuinely surprised. I knew he was going to mention it, but it really surprises me that does it. He didn't like it. I've got.
What about you, man? Is there anything that you would like, tell people to avoid? Something that you think just doesn't really tick the boxes.
Spring Breakers. I didn't love it. I think the problem I had with Spring Breakers, I remember the trailer for it being very much, it was a group of young, hot, sexy girls going on spring break, and it's all fun until it isn't fun. And then the film came out, and it was a bit of a drudge to get through it. It wasn't as fun and sexy and then dark and disturbing. It was just kind of plodding a little bit, and I didn't like that at all. Maybe it's a case of my expectations were somewhere else. I don't know, but I would say to avoid that, especially if you don't like James Franco. I think stay well away from that one. First Cow, which is a film which is really fucking adored by a lot of people, and it felt too arty for me. It felt like it was trying to be A24, and I just didn't like it. But like I said, a lot of people absolutely adore this movie. and I have no idea why. It's not that interesting. A story about a cow. I mean, it is literally about the first cow in this little village, and these two people who have this sort of weird semi-relationship that goes on around the field. I don't know. I couldn't get my claws into it at all. It didn't work for me on any level. I was so hyped for it because of all the reviews I'd read, and it didn't work. And similarly, Minari, which I think might be sacrilegious to say, because again, Minari was Oscar nominated, I can't think it was last year or the year before, and everyone was saying that, even now people still say that film was robbed. I was just bored. It felt like it was such an Americanery kind of a film. It felt too Americanery for me. It was the immigrant experience, which I generally don't, I quite get on with those films. And it's Stephen Yen from Walking Dead, but I just didn't care. I didn't have a character there that I could really identify with and loved enough to care. It was sad at the end that they did a good job of building it up, but throughout the film, it just felt a little bit plodding, a little bit too slow, and I felt too far removed from what was going on that it didn't work for me. But the weird thing is, all three of those films, if you ask a different person, they'll tell you they love all three of those because they do seem to have found their audience with them. But I just very much am not that audience, I don't think.
I cannot believe what my eyes are telling me when I'm Googling at the moment, because I have seen over the course of a few months like trailers for different films I didn't realise were A24s but looked quite interesting. And was going to ask you, Stu, about the slate going forwards and what to look forward to. So I won't steal your thunder there. But Fred Durst is in an A24 horror movie. What on earth is going on here? He's going to be in I Saw the TV Glow. This sounds incredible. This is going to be a day oneer. The teenager is trying to make it through life in the suburbs when his classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. The pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack, and then limp motherfucking biscuit is going to be fucking try holding me back from that cinema to see that one.
Not much has been said about that film, but just from that short description, it sounds like it could be a horror Brigsby Bear.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that. Like, I would want to see that. Sounds really interesting.
I'm hoping, because nearly every film that I've read so far about A24, I'm sure there are comedies and stuff like that in there, but they sound like they're closer to Black Mirror than anything else. I really have a niche at the moment for wanting to see things like Brigsby Bear, Peanut Butter Falcon, like those indie films with heart that may have some dark themes but ultimately are heartwarming. Are there many of them within A24?
Past Lives.
Yes, Past Lives is very heartwarming. If you want something with a bit more comedy, I think Lady Bird, 8th Grade, which was directed by Bo Burnham, that is about the perils of social media on young people and how it influences this girl who's in 8th grade and then coming out at the end of it. I think that's a very good, heartwarming story. Swiss Army Man isn't really that heartwarming. I'm just looking through the list now to see what springs out to me. There's not a lot, because a lot of them are more drama than comedy when it comes to the dramedy. Those are the ones that immediately spring to my mind that I think that they come out with a really feeling happier.
Well, Stu, what's on the slate going forwards? Is there anything that you like the look of? There's one that jumps out to me like a sore thumb that I think you would enjoy, but let's see if you tell me or not.
It's going to be a Civil War.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I foolishly looked up at the screen without realising what it was when I was there watching the film of the year last week. I can't believe the budget is so low for it as well, considering how well it looks. In the 30 seconds that I saw before I did my thing. Yeah, I can't wait. Just the idea of it sounds quite brilliant, and something that I'm amazed hasn't been done before. I mean, I know we've had a few games that are based on the fall of America and that kind of thing. Who were the ones? What were they called? Is it Homefront? Where Korea took over America. They were. I think it was Homefront and Homefront of the Revolution back in the day. That's that. They're kind of Jericho, the series Jericho, where it was they got brought back and finished because it was cancelled in a stupid way. But you don't see Fall of America being a thing that's talked about very often. And seeing old Jesse Plemons laughing to himself, so what kind of American? Superb. Day one. Absolutely.
I remember when that happened in Modern Warfare 2 for Call of Duty, and like you're fighting on American soil. Like with these games, you were used to just fighting in some, or it's always like a Middle Eastern country, or you're fighting against the Russians. Well, this was on American soil, and you were fighting through the suburbs of the streets, and then you were fighting at the White House and stuff like that. And it was just surreal. Like it was genuinely like an oh my god moment in gaming. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it looks excellent, and it's, I guess, as topical as it ever been. Like the fracture between left and right in America, and most countries really, I suppose. Like we've hear what's going on in Germany with their polls. I mean that by the not by the nationality, though. They might be in trouble as well if the right wing have get in, as it sounds like they are going to. In terms of though, like this film, though, it just looks brilliant, and all of a sudden, looking at what's on the slate to me instantly makes it more accessible, because you've got that Love Lies Bleeding, Andy, haven't you? That all like, even though when I look at the poster, it's kind of got a bit of a Tarantino-y feel to it, and it just like the story, the way it was like I saw that at a trailer for, I can't remember what I saw it on, but not a film that you would associate at all with it being hipstery, but it's kind of being brought in, for the masses to see it as well. So, is there anything that's on the slate for you think we should be looking out for?
Yeah. It's on the 29th of March on Apple TV. There is a 2-part documentary called Steve, and it is about Steve Martin's career. I'm really looking forward to that. I think that should be a really interesting, fun show to see. So that's on the list. And Maxine, spelt with 3 X's, it is the culmination of Ty West and Mia Goth's X trilogy. So it started with X, which is this production company hire effectively like a B&B, but it's in the 80s. They hire it at this farm. Things go sideways. People start getting killed. It's basically a slasher movie. The next film is called Pearl. Pearl is set, I think it's 40 years before the events of X, and it's the woman who owned the house, and that she's a complete nut job, basically. This film is now set a few years after the events of X, and it is the sole survivor from X, her story going forward in the porn industry. It looks really interesting. I like how they keep jumping from time period to time period, and the world's changing around them, but they're still keeping this core horror. Mia Goth is absolutely tremendous in the 2 films that they've done so far, so I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this one. That's not out until July, but I'm so excited for that. One thing I'm hoping, when they showed Pearl, it was released in the States in I think it was September or October. We didn't get it until fucking February or March.
Yeah, we all nicked it, didn't we?
Yeah, look, everyone downloaded it because people were so excited to see it. It needs to be shown across the world on the same day, because there is an audience for this film, and I don't want them to miss out on it. So that's the one that's sort of really high on my list. I've just thought of another film, Matt, that I think you might like. I think it might make you cry.
Ooh.
It's called After Sun. And
I do burn.
Yeah, so it's about this girl who is reminiscing about her time with her father when they go on holiday, just the 2 of them. It's really beautiful and moving, and a little bit heartbreaking as well.
Yeah, 100%. That'll get me going.
Yeah, please watch After Sun. I think you'd like it. Paul Mescal as well, who's hot as shit at the minute. So yeah.
Well, I'll have to check that out. But that is an idiot's guide to A24. Basically, it's one of these things. I think going forward on the podcast, we're gonna, as we've mentioned at the start of I think it's the start of the year that we changed the kind of structure a little bit. We're kind of going to do a question cast and then a themed episode. Question cast and then a themed episode. So we're probably going to do some more of these. So if there's anything out there that you would like us to kind of do an idiot's guide to, reach out and we will. If there's anything that you want to know more about or something, we are really at your mercy to cover kind of anything and everything that you'd like us to do, really. What's on our slate, Andy, going forward? Have we got anything lined up over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so next week will be the Oscar fallout. So obviously this podcast goes out on Tuesday, but it's Sunday night for us, which is Oscar night. So we'll be discussing the Oscars on a normal question cast, and then we'll be discussing Dream Scenario, because I thought we may as well tie it in with doing an A24 episode. And then the week after, I'm on an airplane, so Stu will be taking the reins for the first Gamescast of the year.
Excellent. So yeah, thanks everybody for listening to another episode. Follow us on the socials at Cage Fighting Pod. Tell your friends, get them listening and joining all of the stupidity that we try to put out there every week for you. Thanks for everybody for your unwavering support as well. Really does mean a lot. I may or may not be on next week's episode for reasons that I am expecting, or me and my wife are expecting very, 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 very shortly. So if I'm not on, I will speak to you in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, Andy, if you'd like to say goodbye.
Have a good one, everybody. See you soon.
Stu, if you would like to say goodbye.
I mean, this does throw up the possibility of me just talking to myself in a few weeks' time.
I was thinking that, yeah. First ever solo Stu podcast.
Oh, well, but I'm sure there's a demand for it somewhere.
It would still be 80 minutes long as well, though. That's the thing.
I've just talk to myself. I was just talking about kebabs.
What you can do is, like, next, like, as a contingency, next time you're on the Hatherton and you go into a game, put Beau is Afraid on and do, like, a running commentary of, like, from the people on there and see what they think of it. But, yeah. Stu, say goodbye to our dear listeners.
Goodbye. I will be here next week, of course. Bye-bye.
And from me, remember, it is mom, not mum.
Yes.
Take it easy.